Hello ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. I have shaved, which is horrific, so we're going to move swiftly on. It was a poor choice. Today we're going to be making this digital looking portal thing, which is quite cool. I probably won't be making the particle effect, it's quite a basic particle effect, so I'll just delete that actually. This is what we were worried about. It's just a pretty cool portal, and it's got a little dot matrix digital effect going. But I'll also tell you how to do a like a size effect, so you can affect the size in code. Obviously, you can just expose this, say get attribute or whatever it is in code. What's it called? Let me check quickly. And you'll see that it kind of just gets smaller and fades out, which is quite nice for opening and closing the portal. And you can increase the dot size and all that good stuff. So we'll get into making this. And okay, so we've got a brand new scene here. Just put some planes down so it has a nice little backdrop, and we're going to create a shader graph. URP is what we're working in, an unlit shader graph. I'll just call this VFX underscore portal tut for tutorial, and we'll get into this now. First thing I want to do is make sure it's transparent, because obviously we want the portal to be transparent. And then the next thing we're going to do is actually go into Material Maker. Material Maker is just a free software, and it does what it says on the tin. Allows you to make materials, which is generally faster than using the procedural ones in Unity. So Unity actually has a Voronoi texture, but I do think it's faster to generate one. So we're just going to pull out from here, which is the nodes, which is just the normal one. It's not pulling from ScaleX. So we pull from the nodes, so we just put that into a twirl or a swirl. And this is the texture we want, so we're just going to go up here, press export, TAA render. For some reason I can't just press the export button like that, it doesn't really work. So let's find our tutorials folder. I'll just call this. And while we're here, we will also make a little circle texture, which will be our mask, and we'll just set this to 1, which is the size of it, and we'll set the smoothness around there, so it'll kind of feather out around the edge. And again, export, render, and we'll swirl mask PNG. Could just write .png, and that should be good to go. So we've got two things here. First, sample texture 2D, and then drag it straight in, because I don't really see us changing the texture, So we'll just see if that's working firstly, just so it's a bit faster. We'll put that into the base color. I should probably maximize this, but I'll do that in a second. Make that a bit bigger. So we're going to create another plane, so 3D object plane. This one's going to be our actual portal, and we'll reset this, and then maybe make it rotate 90 along the X I think we want, and then maybe 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, drag it up a bit. So this will be our portal, and we will right click, create material from our shader that we've made. So we'll write material portal tut, and we'll drag it on there, and boom, it is working as far as working is. And we can now move on to actually getting it to do what we want. So we obviously want it to twirl, like swirl around, and we're just going to do that with a rotate node. And we can pass that into the UVs of this, and you'll see that if we increase the rotation, it increases like so. So we will do that with a speed float, and we'll just multiply that by a time, and that can go straight into there. And this should rotate by, I think the good speed is -1 because of the direction. Yeah, so this should now just rotate quite nicely. Beyond that, we probably want to add the option to put some color in it, so we're going to put a new color on the portal, on the attributes, and we'll set this to HDR so it can have a nice little glow, a nice little bloom, and as a default color, just something like that. I think obviously we can change it when we get into it. Drop this into a multiply, and then we'll drag this to the output, and we will also drag it to the alpha, so the dark spots will be transparent, and now we can see that's going through. Let me actually make this a bit more visible, and now we need to get to masking it. Texture 2D, and this time we'll put the mask in there, and you just simply multiply these two together. You don't need to multiply the alpha, and this should work. And yes, now we have a pretty simple portal. It doesn't look too bad, if I do say so myself. But we're going to try and add a few more features, such as the size feature, so it can expand and contract, and then a little digital feature at the end. You're basically going to put a tiling and offset node into the UVs of the sample texture, and we can kind of see that this will work by increasing the tiling here, so you can see that it kind of makes it smaller. So let's get another float, put it, say size, and bring it through here. I'm not going to explain the maths, it's not too complicated. And from this lerp node, we will go into the tiling. So we can just save that and show you what it looks like. So size, it will kind of go down to that size. Right. And then we'll basically multiply this by a constant 0.5. And then we will add a constant 0.5. So if we do 1 minus this should work. And now we can see that it gets smaller, so it kind of like collapses on itself. Obviously there's the issue of it repeating, which is originally how I came up with the digital looking effect, because I was like, oh, this is actually quite cool, even though that's not what I wanted here. And we can simply fix this by changing the sampler state to clamp. And now it should go straight down. Done. Did I say dumb or done? Either way. So yeah, that's working quite nicely. And from there we can just add the digital effect. But before we do that, I actually kind of want to multiply this quite simply by the size itself. So basically what this is going to do is, as we get closer to 0, the overall alpha will fade out. So the minimum size won't be like this, it'll actually be totally transparent. So it has maximum opacity now, and it kind of fades out into nothing because it goes down, which is quite cool. So that's looking nice. Now we just have to add the last piece, which is another sample texture 2D. And again, we'll be putting a mask into it just to have loads of tiny circles to make that sort of, dot matrixy effect. And we will simply do this by just increasing the scale of it as we did before. You don't need a tiling and offset node because it would just basically, you can just use a simple version, so just affect the UV themselves. And I'll make another float for the dot size. And we should just be able to multiply these together. Multiply A into B, and that goes into there. And I think dot size says like 40 or 20 is nice. That's a default value. And then we'll multiply this by this. And you see it has a nice little matrixy kind of effect now. We'll plug that into there instead. And that should be all we need to do. So if we look at it now, it's quite digitally when it comes in, and yeah, it looks pretty nice. So that's what we got. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking around, and yeah, prepare for another video in half a year.